There was a 20th century trial attorney named Irving Younger who, over the course of his career, gave many lectures, and one of them was entitled In Praise of Simplicity. And in the opening lines of that lecture, he had this statement that simplicity marks the master. And what he meant by that was that true mastery comes from trusting your ability to make something simple that is beautiful without being loaded down or weighed down by complications and unnecessary things. And when I think about pens, I think about how certain brands achieve beauty through simplicity, and that the using of this simple object can bring so much satisfaction. And I want to talk to you about one of those brands right now. Let's check it out. I'm Joshua Lax, fountain pen user, collector,
A bit like all of Andrew's, right?
and all-around fanatic. In fact, I'm so obsessed, I started a business where I get to work with other people's pens. And now, I want to share with you everything I love about the world of fountain pens. From the new pens, to the old pens, the nibs, the ink, the paper, and of course, the people. This is Uncapped.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. It's a stormy morning here in northern New Jersey, so if you hear some thunder, I apologize, but nonetheless, I wanted to shoot this video this morning. And what I'm talking about in this video is the nib offerings from a brand known as Leonardo. Its full name is Leonardo Officina Italian. Leonardo is a company that is based outside Naples in southern Italy. I've actually been to their factory. And one of the reasons I wanted to feature this, and this is actually the first time I'm featuring just like a brand's nibs in the way I'm going to do it, is because I love the pens. The pens are great. I love the people behind the pens. They're great. And they bring together so much of what's wonderful about pens right now. And having, again, been there and seen the amount of work that goes into what they're producing, I think they're really worthy of a feature. Now, that is not to say there are not other brands that are equally as great or have equally great people behind them. I just have decided to do this one first. One of the other interesting things about Leonardo is they were introduced several years ago. The brand started. It had like a basic model. The models and the offerings have been expanded since that time, but one of the other things that has changed is the nibs they offer and how they do the nibs. And that also, I think, is kind of interesting. So I wanted to kind of give folks a look at the brand overall. I don't know how it's possible, but if you're not as familiar with them. And I wanted to talk about what the different nibs are, just so in case you're looking at an older model versus a newer model and what the nib is and things of that nature, you have some basic information. Also, I think some of them are kind of interesting, so I wanted to share that with you all. So let's take a look. I have 18 different pens to show you the nibs on. Now, I'll say that this is not really a review of any particular model. You'll see I have various models to show you. Some are very similar, some are very different, and the nibs are different. But the point is to give an overview of what the nibs are. I'll write with them, and you can kind of get a sense of what's going on. I have at least one that I ground myself, so it's not going to be exactly as it was from the factory, but I wanted to just show it nonetheless. So let's get to it. We're going to take a look at these pens right now. We have here in front of us 12 of my personal Leonardo pens. We also have 3 more that I'll talk about. I selected these all for a very particular purpose. I'll explain in a second. First, who or what is Leonardo Officina Italian? So Leonardo Officina Italian is a company based outside Naples in southern Italy, near a town called Caserta. And Leonardo is owned right now by a man named Salvatore Matrone. Now, the Matrone family have been in pen making for quite a while. Salva's father was one half of the partnership that ran Delta for many years. Delta went defunct. Salvatore's father and Nino Marino, the other man who behind Delta, went their separate ways. A number of years later, Salva started Leonardo. You can see if you look at old Delta designs, old Delta pens, you'll see some referential stuff. You'll see some of the designs are sort of similar. Some of the aesthetics can be a little bit similar, but I really think that Delta is a whole separate thing, and Salva has really made this his own. I think these pens, personally, for me, are better than the modern Delta, like the new Delta that you see sold. I like these better, just my opinion, not asking anyone to co-sign on that. Now, what do we have here? What we have here is models, and more particularly the nibs in them, that span the history of Leonardo so far. So Leonardo has not been around too long. I forget the exact year that it went into manufacture and was available on the market. But basically, they started with a basic model, which is similar to the one here, which was called the Momento Zero, still is called the Momento Zero. And up into today, they've been expanding the offerings, right? So, they have the Grande that got introduced. They have the piston fill pens. They have the piston fill Grande pens. They have the Supernova, I think is this model. They have the Momento Zero Grande 2.0. And then they had this model, which is like this cigar-shaped thing. I think it was an exclusive for Katawiki, which is a European auction site. So they've really expanded the range of what's offered, but they all have a very cohesive design aesthetic. But again, my point today is to just go through and show you what the nibs are in these pens. And I'm going to do that starting here on the left with the old version. Or I say old, it's not only a few years old, but the original Momento Zeros had Bock nibs. So I'm going to take you from the Bock nib era through to today, the different size nibs. The one other thing I'll say before we get into it is Leonardo has offered certain models with a number 5 nib. You've heard me talk about these sizes on the channel before. 5, 6, 8, 9, 10. I do not have any of the Model 5 nibs to show you, or the number 5 nibs to show you. I have plenty of the number 6. I have some of the number 8 that they use. They use number 8 size nibs in titanium and gold, and I'll show you that today. So let's get started. All right, I have removed the pen tray to avoid issues with the focus, and I put down a Kikuyo soft ring. So the rings are actually, you can crush them and they won't break. So it makes it a little more durable in terms of a ring notebook. But I put the paper here, and I'm going to basically pull each pen from the tray, and then I'm going to show you it, and then I'll write with it. So let's start with number 1. Number 1 is not the original Momento Zero, but an early Momento Zero. So this, I believe, was a Pen Chalet exclusive. It has a blue Hawaii barrel, or some people would call this a binda because it's just part of the barrel. It's not the whole thing. And I can't recall, but I believe some of these models had ebonite finials and caps and sections. It could be black acrylic, I don't really remember, but nonetheless, this was an early Pen Chalet exclusive. And what you'll see in the early Momento Zeros is basically Bock nibs. So how do you know it's a Bock nib? First of all, the feed is usually a telltale giveaway. This is the design of Bock feeds. Not all Bock nibs will have this feed, but this is in fact a Bock feed. Like, it's one of their feeds. The other thing is the shape of the nib is a little different than, say, the JOWO we're going to see shortly. And so that is how you know it's a Bock. And I also know that that's what they were using early on. I believe at this point, Leonardo was doing the plating on these themselves. And you'll see that these, rather than being stamped, they're engraved. Let's see if we can get that to focus. We'll see that the nibs are now imprinted or stamped as opposed to having laser engraving into the metal. So this was the early style of nib. Let's just write with it for a second. Oh, by the way, this is a medium nib, and I ground this to like a stub. So you'll see more line variation. Oh, that's a little focus. I believe that there just was a release at the time that I'm filming this of a new iteration of this model for Pen Chalet, and it's all Jonathan Brooks bindas or barrel parts. All right. The one thing that what I recall with these nibs is they tend to be a little bit springier compared to the JOWOs that get used later. They are nowhere a flexy nib, but they were a little bit, they had a little bounce to them that I don't think the JOWOs had. So that is the early Bock medium. Now I have here the next model, which is the Fior. And the Fior was, or is, they continue to make certain Fiores. They even have a Fior Grande now. The Fior was like a cigar shape. It almost looks like an old Schaefer balance. And this came in variations of this kind of like, I call it almost like moon rock. Like it looks like craters and things like that. They had red, they had white, I think they had blue. Again, I think this is a Italian resin, or one of the Italian acrylic companies makes this, because you see it in a lot of Italian pens of various manufacturers, but they did an absolute beautiful job with this one. This too is a gold plated, I should say, Bock nib. How do we know it's Bock? Well, we flip it over and we see the very typical Bock feed. Again, not every Bock nib out there has this style of feed, but this is a very common feed used by Bock in their nib units. And again, you can kind of see the shape's a little different than what was offered by JOWO at the time. This also, I think, was plated in-house. We'll talk about the plating in a second, or what they do now with the plating, and it's also laser engraved. This nib is a B or broad. It is not ground or anything by me. I did use this for a period of time, but it has not been used in a while. And you can see it writes a heavier line than the previous pen, and it has a little bit of bounce as well. Again, if you have one of these, I would not flex it, because there will be a point where if you try and flex it, it will just not come back, and then you'll be emailing someone like me to basically have it fixed. All right, so that is the Fior with the Bock nib. All right, now the next one is quite special, and I believe this is also a Bock nib. I believe it is the pre-switch to the JOWO nib styles. And this is, I think it was called the Art Deco. I think they release something like this everything, or maybe it's the Guilloche Deco. It has some variation on Art Deco and Guilloche. What is Guilloche? Guilloche is an old technique of basically texturizing the hard rubber pens primarily. And basically what would happen, and I don't know if this is what they do with this one, but the original way they made Guilloche was they would have a metal, what's the word for it? Like a stamp that you would roll the pen over. And so because ebonite can be shaped and formed using heat, they would heat the stamp and then they would roll the pen over the stamp that was hot, and that would imprint a design into the ebonite. And if you actually were to take a heat gun, which you can do that, you would probably not melt away the design, but the design would disappear because the ebonite would kind of just unstamp itself, as it were. So this, I don't know how they did this one exactly, but this is meant to incorporate that type of design aesthetic, that design feature. This one was actually gifted to me, lucky me, and this is a Grande size. So you'll see I have other Grandes we're going to talk about, but this particular design had a ring at the top of the section, and then it had a gold, I believe this one's 14K. So this is the 14K. I believe this is a Bock Gold Broad. which are great nibs. The Bock gold nibs are phenomenal, and this one is itself phenomenal. Like the other nibs we've looked at so far, the nibs were engraved, and we'll see that changes to stamping or imprinting shortly. But this is a really, I mean, this, for a while I thought maybe this would be, maybe I should stop buying pens, and this would just, like, I'd be like one of those people that had one pen, and this was the one pen I thought I was going to just use consistently. Like, I'd have it everywhere with me, sign everything with it. So this, again, let's dip this a little better. Sometimes the ebonite feeds pull the ink back and away from the tip. There we go. I'm sort of spitballing the name here. So I'm just labeling that these three are the Bock era. And you can see how wet a writer this is. And it had the matching red ebonite feed. I think all these feeds that we're going to talk about that they use that are ebonite are made by Leonardo in their factory. It's not something they outsource. So that is this absolute beauty, right? Look at that. Love it. I realized I didn't say this before, so let me say it now. The ink that I'm using here is Leonardo's blue ink. They have the ink. They don't make the ink in-house, but they have it custom made, I believe. So this is their blue. I think they've actually just released a new ink line. I'm not really familiar with it yet. However, this was what they were offering up until at least a month or two ago. All right, moving right along. So now I believe we get into the JOWO era. And the switch to JOWO, I think, was great because I think it made great pens even greater. So what I'm going to show you is now this Mosaico. I think this is the Mango. Let's see, it's Leonardo Mosaico. It says 561 there. I believe this is the Mango version of the Mosaico. Basically, it's like these materials are like the Blue Hawaii, but then the manufacturer does something to achieve this kind of like not crosshatch, but like this kind of chessboard pattern, right? So you can see the lines there, but when you look at it here, you can see that there's this checkered pattern going across. This is, I believe, a piston filler. Yep. And this one has a JOWO medium. So when they switched to the JOWO, they continued to do the engraving on the nib. Nonetheless, it is a really nice writer. Again, I used this for a period of time. Let's dip this in the Leonardo blue. Just dab this off to not make it too wet. So this is the Leonardo Mosaico Mango JOWO. So see, it's somewhat wet there, but all of these nibs write great. I mean, it is terrific. All right, so that dropped the cap off camera and it bounced into camera. Okay, so we have, again, this Mosaico. It's the Grande size as well. 3, 2, 1. I opened to a new fresh piece of paper because I know myself, and if I keep going too long, it's going to all look like a jumbled mess and will no doubt drive some of you insane looking at that. So to keep order and to keep the viewers happy, I have switched to a new piece of paper, which brings us to our next pen. So like the previous pen, which was a Mosaico, this is also a Mosaico. This particular pen is the Mosaico Sand. So again, there was an acrylic that was used, I believe, in an earlier model that was just striated, kind of what you see here, but without the cross lines. And then to make the Mosaico material, the material is cut and re-melted together, I guess, or some such process. And it gives us what is the hallmark of the Mosaico line, which is these checkerboard patterns in the acrylic. Also, a really interesting color, sort of muted compared to the mango that we just saw, but nonetheless a really elegant, beautiful pen. And this is also in the what they call the Grande size. The reason I have a second Mosaico is because, one, it's a beautiful pen, but two, unlike the predecessor, the mango we just looked at, this particular pen has a 14 karat JOWO nib. And in addition to the 14 karat being different, it's a broad. So unlike the last Mosaico we looked at, which was a steel medium, this is a gold broad. And the other thing it has is a Leonardo original ebonite feed. One of the things I really liked about these ebonite feeds, and you'll see them in some other pens, they have this really elegant kind of curvature running the length of it, right? So it's not just like one swoop. It's got kind of a, you can kind of see that it looks almost like the end of a roller coaster or something. And I think that's really elegant, and it adds a lot aesthetically to the pen. Even when you're kind of look at it when you're writing, you know, it just adds something. So this pen has already been dipped. Let's give you a little writing sample. Move this into view. So this is the Mosaico Grande, we'll write, Sand, and it has a 14 karat JOWO broad. And like all the other Leonardo nibs we've looked at, they have nice wet nibs. This one I dipped earlier and was playing with it. So let's give it a little more ink. So you see dipped, super heavy. That's not really a fair and accurate representation. There we go. That's sort of what the normal line is. And I will say, you know, earlier I was commenting that the Bock 14K nibs are really nice. The JOWO 14K nibs are really nice. I don't know if Leonardo uses the JOWO 18 karat nibs, but JOWO does make 18 karat nibs, and you'll see those available from various manufacturers. They do both grades. One thing is that certain modifications, like if you want to add flex to things, you need a 14K nib. It works better. It doesn't work as well with the 18K nibs. Again, conversation for another time. All right. Where are we at in our pantheon of Leonardo nib samples? Well, we are now going to switch from the more standardized JOWO nibs to the more customized JOWO nibs with the introduction of what's called the La Fenice nib. And the La Fenice nib, and I have here just a steel broad example of it, and I'll show you a close-up in a second. The La Fenice nib is imprinted or stamped. So as opposed to a laser engraving on the surface of the nib, there's actually an imprint that's made using like a die that's cut specifically for this nib. I don't know if Leonardo stamps these things in-house or they come to them already. The other thing they're doing is they're plating these things using a special metal plater, meaning that the when it is needed to be plated, they have someone special do it that gives them the best quality plating they can get, which I think is great. We'll talk about a little bit more of that in a second. But the other thing to see with stamped nibs sometimes is if you can actually see the nib imprint on the reverse side. So you take the nib out gently, and I'm just using some force. There we go. And we will slide the feed away, and you can kind of see that there is the indications of the stamping on the back. So when you think about how this nib is imprinted, it is laid on one side of a die, and then another one comes down with a lot of force and punches that design into the nib. So that is a La Fenice nib. So it's a little more elaborate, right? And it's a little more care, and it's a little more work that's put into what is already a great pen. So let's have a writing sample with this. Hopefully I didn't mess this up. Move it out of alignment. Feels pretty good. Feed looks like it's in the right spot. Yeah, we are all systems go. All right, so this model, by the way, I don't know if it has a name. It was, I think, designed for Katawiki, which is I think I said earlier, a auction site that is primarily for sellers in Europe. And we can see that this is a really nice wet writer. It's got a JOWO steel B, and obviously because I dipped it, it's writing fairly wet. Let's give you a little more of an accurate view. Yeah, that looks like what I would expect it to look like if I was just writing with this nib. All right, and this is gold plated, right? So if you were to grind away or polish off the gold plating, it would reveal basically silver colored metal underneath. And this material, I think, is also an Italian resin. There was something similar used in the modern Conway Stewarts. There still are. I think all those resins that Conway Stewart tends to use actually come from Italy. They're, from my understanding, extremely hard, so they need extremely sharp tools to cut these, meaning to take away the material and shape the pen. So that is something else built into the work that they're doing. All right, so that was the steel La Fenice, and I'm going to show you now this wild beauty. This has a 14 karat gold nib. So what is this pen? Let's talk about just the pen for a second before we get to the nib. So this is a special edition that was made, I think it was limited, for a store in Rome called Stilo Fedi. Stilo Fedi is an old school Italian pen shop located in the center of Rome. I have been there. It is really interesting. It has a lot of cool displays with vintage Italian pens, Italian pen ephemera, and whatnot. And one of the things they're doing is they have a line that is manufactured for them and probably designed too by Leonardo, which is based on the 7 kings of Rome that I think preceded the Roman Republic before, the year 0, sometimes called BCE or BC. And these pens commemorate different kings. So this one is for Tulio Ailio, and I think Tulio Ailio looks to be the 7th. And I don't know why this material was chosen. All I know is it looks great. The pen has some other really nice details that you don't see in the normal lineup. First of all, it has a different clip than you often see, and that is textured, so it's got this nice matte finish. It has a special cap ring that is engraved, like fully engraved, with Tulio Ailio. I think there's no marking in the back, and then it has branding and the edition engraved in there. The other thing this is, it has a nice translucency, and so you can actually see a little bit of the piston through the material, and it's just all around a really gorgeous pen. The material, I believe, is Jonathan Brooks warm tones. Now to the nib. The nib is the 14K La Fenice nib. So like the steel one, it goes through the same process of being imprinted, and unlike the steel one, has another custom ebonite feed. This one obviously is a little different than the Mosaico Sand we were looking at. This has these lines cut into the bottom, but again, I think that this is all made by Leonardo, and you can even see a little bit of that flamboyance and the curvature that is cut into the bottom of the feet. All right, let's give this one a dip and a writing and see where we're at. So actually, I don't want this to flood onto the paper because it gives you all an unfair look at what the level of wetness. So try to dab off some of that ink. All right, so this is the Stilo Fedi Tulio Ailio number 7. It's got a broad JOWO 14K, Jonathan Brooks, warm tones. All right, and again, super gorgeous at every level, and the ink level is running a little low, which is fine, but you can still see you get a really nice flow and writing experience as you write with it. All right, this one, unfortunately, this model is sold out. I believe I just saw on Instagram, however, that Stilo Fedi has another edition that's white. I don't know much about the material and all the features of it, but I saw that there is a new Kings of Rome edition from Stilo Fedi. And there were various ones. There's one that's wood. I mean, they've been doing this for several years, I believe, even pre-COVID. And I don't know where they stopped, but I know this is what it is. Or what I've said about this is what it is. All right. Now, I mentioned earlier that Leonardo is getting special plating done for their nibs, that they're going to someone, they're not just receiving kind of the stock or the factory plated nibs. I don't know how they're coming to them originally. I've not seen that. However, they are sending their nibs out to be plated by a special factory or a special person that does plating. And I'm going to open to a new page here, because again, I don't want to squeeze too much in. And we're going to look actually at the black plated nibs. So for those of you who are interested in the brand, you've probably seen that you can get pens with a rhodium plated trim, right? So the clip, the cap ring, the ring that separates the barrel from the piston knob, all is rhodium plated, right? So it's like a dark metal plating. This, however, comes with not like an unplated nib, but comes with a what we're going to call black plated nib. It's dark gray, black. It's something like that, right? And again, this is done after I believe it's stamped out, right? So let me raise that if I can hit the light. I'm going to put up a close-up right now of it. So you see that the nib is stamped, it is imprinted, and then it has this gorgeous black plating. And this nib we're looking at is a medium nib that is on a piston-filled pen. So I think this is a Momento Zero, Momento Magico, but it's a special edition. It has a special cap ring there, and I forget the material, but I just love this green material. I think I got it at the DC Pen Show from Salva himself at his table, because he comes every year. So if you're going to the DC Pen Show this year or San Francisco, you have an opportunity to actually meet the people from Leonardo themselves and see a number of special editions. And it's similar to Franklin Christoph, it can get quite busy because, especially at the beginning, people want to see the special items he's brought from the factory. All right. The other thing I'll say, well, actually, we'll hold off on that for a second. I have one more point to make, but we're going to hold that in reserve. All right. So this, I said, was a medium. Let's give it a little dab and give it a little writing. So this is the Momento Magico Special Edition. Black plated Sorry if this bothers people. Black plated M JOWO La Fenice. And you can see it is a beautiful writer. All right. Now, I was going to make another point, so let me make that point now. So, you stay there, friendo. All right. So this is a medium nib. I also have, and it's a medium steel. I also have a broad steel nib on the Supernova. This is actually what they call gallery. That's the name of the material. Again, this was something that you saw in Delta pens and still see in Delta pens, but it's not exclusive to one particular maker, so Leonardo has used it as well. And this one, also like the Momento Magico here, has rhodium-plated metal parts. So the cap has the cap ring, the clip, the different hardware on the pen itself, the finial piece of like kind of coin there, that's all rhodium. And so this has the black nib. The thing I wanted to say about this in relation, and it's really in relation to this, is that you can see just me holding up the pen there that the broad has a lot more of a cushion around the nib or around the tip. What I mean by that is it's rounder and it's a little more bulbous. This one is a little toothier because it's not as cushiony as that one. And so if you're somebody that likes more of the feel of the paper as you write, I would recommend to you the medium in this pen. If you're looking at these nibs, the black plated nibs on these pens. Whereas this, and I'll write with it in a second, has a more cushioned feel, and so it's going to feel a lot more like a little more of a marker feeling than, say, the medium, which has a little bit of that pencil-like feedback that folks talk about. All right, so this is the Supernova gallery with a black plated JOWO broad La Fenice. All right. I have used this pen extensively. This is one of those pens that I just cleaned out, but it was inked up for a long time. And I kept using it. I really like this shape. I think this step here would probably drive people who don't like step ups nuts, but with my size hands, this was always super comfortable. And I just saw there's a new edition of this that's sort of a special edition that is using Jonathan Brooks material. It may already be sold out, but that just came out. So if you missed these pens, but you like this shape, there is an alternative on the market, and it may even be a bigger version of this with a piston filler. All right, so those are both steel La Fenice nibs that are plated black. You saw this pen in the intro when I was writing my list of silly things to call people. This is the Leonardo Art of Guilloche Grande 2.0. So it's the MZG 2.0, Momento Zero Grande 2.0. It is made out of this really cool light blue ebonite, and it's all got the rhodium plating, and it has a black nib. However, the difference between what we looked at just now and this nib is it's actually a 14 karat gold nib, and it's a stub. So it's going to write very different. Because I had inked it up for the intro, I don't need to dip it. We can just get to the writing. So let me shift this a little bit. So this is the MZG Grande. Well, I guess that's redundant because the G is Grande, but 2.0 Art of Guilloche, or Guilloche. And I talked about guilloche earlier in relation to the red ebonite pen. This is blue or light blue ebonite, and it also has a guilloche pattern, much more like the classic, which sort of has these like wavy lines and then lines going up and down the length of the pen. So if I go Go slow. Hopefully you see that there. Really comfortable, really nice to use. The nib writes super wet, always has. This one has that Leonardo Ebonite feed, so it's got really solid flow. If you were looking for something with less flow, you probably want the medium version of this nib, or even a fine, depending on your taste. I really love the big nibs, as you might gather from both the pens I've shown in this video and in others. So for me, this is, super enjoyable. The other thing I will tell you is that this is, in this pen, I have filled it with the Leonardo Black, which is a really nice black. They also make a line called Radius. We can talk about that line another day. But the Radius has a similar really nice black ink that comes with some of the special edition pens. Last thing I just want to show you is, unlike some of the other pens we've looked at, this actually has the branding on the section. It's super classic looking. Obviously, I'm trying to catch that in the video there, but it says Leonardo, Italy on the side of the section, and if you're a righty, you can see you're not really gonna be rubbing that much because your fingers don't really go there. But all in all, this is like one of those pens. I don't know. I gravitate, even though I only have a couple of the Ebonite pens from Leonardo. There's just something about them that I just keep using them as if they're like the special ones in the collection, even though you can see I have a whole boatload of special pens. So that is the Art of Guilloche. I think it's still available in various, there were other colors that it came in. There was a darker blue, I don't remember what else. They came in various platings. And I will say, actually, a lot of these pens, like for example this one too, you could get them with various hardware. Depending on the color, you might see it with gold plated clips and cap rings and other rings. You might see it with rose gold. That's very popular. But ultimately, you can get some of these models, they get re-released in new finishes and new colorways every so often. So if you're interested, definitely check them out. There's a good amount of vendors now online in Italy, in the United States, that have different options. And you can buy direct from Leonardo as well. We come now to the big nibs. And Leonardo sells two different types of number 8 nibs. First is the titanium nibs, which we will see shortly in these two pens. And second, they have gold number 8. There was a pre-gold number, well, let me explain differently. Prior to the La Fenice nibs, they had gold number 8 nibs. So I'll show you one of those in a second. And then now the La Fenice nibs are also available as number 8 gold nibs, in addition to the number 6 steel and gold. But first, let's talk about the titanium. So I got these two pens directly from Leonardo at pen shows. I believe I got this one at the DC pen show, and it's in this lovely snakeskin Juma. And I got this one in this beautiful swirly, I think they called it caramello, or caramel acrylic, at the San Francisco pen show. Both of these were things I just kept walking by the table, and I was like, I can't not get it. And so I got them, and I got them with titanium nibs. And they have two different size number 8 titanium nibs. So let's look at the first one. The first one here is, as you can see, it has gold plating on the cap and the rings on the various places on the pen. And it has a gold-plated titanium nib. I believe it's gold-plated. I don't really know what they're doing. The other thing to know about these nibs is, unlike the number 8 gold nibs I'm going to show you in a second that have, they're custom made for Leonardo. I believe these titanium nibs are just Bock titanium nibs. They do, however, both have, with the titanium nibs, the custom feed that they make for the number 8 nibs. So, although pretty much everything here is made by Leonardo, so far as I know, the only thing that's not on this pen and on the caramel one is the nib. All right, let's give you, one last thing before we do the writing sample. So this has, it's I think engraved on the nib, and it has the Leonardo logo. It says Leonardo, Italy, TI22, and then in Italian, the word here is medio, which means medium. So this is a medium titanium nib, and I'll show you, the caramel has a broad one. We'll talk about that one in a second. But let's write with this one, and then we'll take it from there. So here is the Momento, oh, a door just opened. Momento Zero Grande S, we'll take a 5, SE Juma TI medium number 8. Okay, and let's give you some of the cross hatching. Door again, some figure 8s. One more of this. It is a very pleasant nib to use. One of the features of it is that it has a little bit of springiness. I would not call it flexible. It does not flex. It is strictly a springy nib, but it's got really great flow. Although it's like a medium, you can see it's like a really nice wet writer. Obviously I dipped it, but normally it's a wet writer. I can tell you that from experience. And you get really consistent, juicy lines. So I believe they make these in fine nibs. They may even do an extra fine, I'm not sure. In any event, it is a wonderful nib, and it, with the size of the pen, the size of the nib, and everything together, it just works wonderfully. So something to check out. I don't know how, like, if you go to a retail vendor, or like let's say an online dealer who carries Leonardo, I think that sometimes they'll release a special edition where you can get nibs like this, but I think most often it's something that you have to buy direct from Leonardo, because these Momento Zero Grandes in the special edition they do, they more or less, I think, sell those directly. And so, like, if you go to a pen show, they'll have a bunch of them. If you go on the website, you'll see they have them in various materials. They'll have them in Jonathan Brooks materials and different special custom blank makers, different acrylics. Some are celluloid. There's a whole bunch of variety available. All right, let's talk about this pen. One thing I didn't mention with the other pen, well, you can see it's an unplated titanium nib, matches the sort of silver colored plated rings and clip on the cap. But what I wanted to just mention, which I didn't show you with the other pen, is that these are both piston fillers. So as many of you are aware, you would unscrew the knob, it advances a piston inside the pen, and then when you insert the pen into the ink, and you're going to now draw ink up into the pen, you close this. And that's how it fills. So this is, we'll call it the Caramello. I think that's what they called it. And it, again, has another titanium nib. Now, unlike, the only real difference between the Juma one we were just looking at is that instead of medio, it says largo on the face of the nib, or the top of the nib. And the largo means large or broad. So this was a medium, this is a broad titanium nib, and I'll write with it momentarily. The last thing I'll point out is, just like its mate, it has a custom ebonite feed from Leonardo. All right. With all that being said, let's go to the writing sample. This one is the Momento Zero Grande. Oh, we got to write around that. SE Caramello TI Largo number 8. Okay. You can see that on some strokes it's very similar to the medium. On others, particularly over here, so let's move that front and center for a second. It's actually quite heavier just in terms of the thickness. But like the medium, it's got a nice smooth flow. It's very consistent. One thing I'm noticing with this nib, I don't know if you can hear it, is it has a little bit of a tendency to squeak depending on how much pressure is being put on that. And what that is it just means that there's extra space being created between the feed and the nib. And that is, it's easy to fix. Well, I say easy to fix, but basically what it means is that there's a little issue with the tipping, and so there's like a little extra edge or something that's pushing the one side of the tine or one tine away from the nib than the other, and it's creating a little bit of space. The other thing that it could be is just that it needs to be seated a little bit better against the feed, although that would start to sound like a tuning fork if that was the case. So I think it's probably just something, and I could feel there's just like a little edge that needs to get taken care of. But that should not dissuade anyone from purchasing these nibs. They are great. I know that Leonardo does a lot to make sure they're QC'd before they come to you. This may just be from me messing around with it. I'll figure it out. But the overall, it is a truly wonderful writing experience. And again, it's something I think you have to get direct from Leonardo, but they are super easy to deal with. And you know, again, they sell a myriad of these Momento Zero Grandes that take either the TI nibs or the titanium nibs or the gold nibs. So I recommend checking those out if you're interested. Obviously, if you're at a pen show and they're there, I know they will be this summer, 2025, at a couple of the different shows. You can, you know, basically see everything live and up close, write with things, ask questions, meet Salva, meet Clarissa, who is his American, or I shouldn't say American, but his rep in the United States. And they're all wonderful folks. So definitely go check it out. All right, we will now turn to the gold nibs that come in the number 8 sizes from Leonardo. All right, we come now to the number 8 gold nibs. So the first thing I'm going to show you is this pen. I think it's called Cielo Blue is the material, and it has a number 8 nib. Now, I don't know exactly where this particular nib came from. It could be Bock, but as I'm going to show you in a minute, there are these special nibs that Leonardo gets, and I don't know if this is one of them. But in any event, this was, you know, on the special edition gold a couple years ago. This is the nib you were getting. You can see that it is laser engraved like some of the older versions. It's a 14K, and it's a stub. So, and I've actually never written with this one, I realize. So this is a maiden voyage for us. All right. So this is the, there we go, Momento Zero. Oh, it's so smooth. Grande SE Special Edition. Cielo Blue. 14K, number 8 stub. And that is an amazing nib. We'll see, I have other stubs like this in a second, but I am digging this. It's a little different, I just know, from the other one I'm about to show you in a second. All right, so this is not a La Fenice nib. This has laser engraving. It is considered something else. Right? Let's turn to the La Fenices. So the first one I have for you is this. This is like the blue snake pattern, the Juma. This is the brown. However, it's a little more swirly than snake skin. And I think that, I guess you can get the Juma in the same snakeskin pattern, or you can get it in a little differently. This one is pretty cool, although it does not have the snakeskin really. You can see little oval-esque shapes. In any event, what we're really talking about here, and you can see that I already dipped and tested this one. This is the number 8 La Fenice. And this is something that, as far as I know, you can only get through Leonardo pens. Leonardo has these made by a company that's not Bock, not JOWO, not Schmidt. It is someone else that makes nibs. They do this to spec, and they get these really great 14K nibs that go on their special edition Grande pens. I think if you get some of the limited edition, special editions with the number 8 nibs, like the Dodici and things like that, it's the same nib. I have them only on these like limited kind of things I got at the pen shows from Leonardo. So this is the broad, and I may need to dip it a little more. And I believe it's considered a Grande. 14K. Number 8 broad La Fenice. Now, I will make one observation to all of you, which is I'm dipping these nibs, and they're huge nibs with huge ebonite feeds. And I think what's happening is if I don't dip it deep enough, like if I'm only dipping it up to here as opposed to up to here, the ebonite is pulling the ink in all different directions. So it's not writing as wet as, say, that one or that one, just because I didn't dip it so deep. But you can see as I scribble with it, you get some nice wet writing. And there is nothing to complain about with this nib. It is nice. I will say it's a little less cushiony than I would have expected with a broad, but it is, as you can see, I just can't help myself. I can't stop. All right, let's keep going to our final pen. And this is another Grande. This one is rose gold finish on the metal parts and on the nib itself. And this one is a stub. So this is that special nib made to spec, but in the stub form. So it's different than this one, which was a broad. This is a stub. Again, it has like an in-house made ebonite feed. This one's blue. The last one was black. And it is in La Fenice nib because it is imprinted, right? So someone's making these nibs and they have a number 8 or a stamp or imprinting device that matches this. And they put the imprint in, and then I guess they plate it. So let's see. We got too much ink that time. All right. So this is Momento. All right. Definitely need more coffee. Grande. And to avoid that, it is a 14K number 8. That was just me pressing too much. So it railroaded 14K stub La Fenice. And you just heard a door open in my house. So that was that was. So we have a beautiful nib. Let's dip this. I love this pen. The material is actually, if some of you may remember, there was an Aurora special edition that had like a green material, sort of like this, with like black specks and a little bit of sparkle in it. This is the blue version that Leonardo had gotten. Oh yeah, there we go. Look how nice that is. So that is a great nib from a great company that makes great pens. So all of these La Fenice nibs are basically what's standard now, right? So if you get a number 6, nib, my understanding is you're going to get a La Fenice nib. If you get the number 8, you're going to get the La Fenice nib. Again, I cannot overemphasize enough how hard Leonardo works to make these pens. I mean, they put a tremendous amount of labor into it. So if you just like look at this, right? So first of all right, they're having someone make the nib to their specifications. They're doing a whole plating process to make sure it's the best possible plating, right? Then pretty much every piece of the pen that you're looking at, other than the nib, is made by them, right? So all these rings, they make those. The clip, they punch that out, then they plate that. They make the feed. There's a piston in here. I believe they're fabricating most, if not all, of the parts of the piston. So this is really like, a tremendous amount of work that goes into it. And it's not a tremendous factory. Like, I've been there. It's not that big, and not as big as you'd think for what you're getting and for the number of pens that they have available out there to buy. So it's really a very impressive situation. And, as you've seen, they work in all different materials, and that itself presents certain issues, because when you have different materials, your tooling has to match that. So really, each one of these pens is a product of a real amount of passion and dedication to the art of pen making, right? And as you can see, there's a lot of artistry that goes into each one of these pens. I mean, just even this one, right? Like, this is a special edition. All of these parts of it, the clip, the texturized ring there that's engraved, all of that has to go through various processes to get it to the final point where it's good enough to put on a pen. And they have an immense amount of material there to work with that they acquire to be able to make the variety of pens that they do. All right, well, as you can see, the nib offerings from Leonardo are tremendous. It's not just, the run-of-the-mill JOWOs. Like, things are being purchased from, say, JOWO or, the big nib company, and then being turned into their own. And that, I think, is what makes it, something worthy of conversation to the degree I've done today. If you've enjoyed today's video, you want to keep going, please like and subscribe. I look forward to talking to you about much more. I'm actually currently working on a version of this type of video, this format, with Sailor. So I hope to have that ready for you all soon. Please like and subscribe, and I look forward to another conversation about great pens, great nibs, and this great community real soon. Thank you so much.